1. This story begins almost 10 years ago now, in a quietish town in the Midlands, UK. My best friend and I were out for her 19th birthday in one of the town's two clubs. This one was known for being the less seedy of the two. My friend Marilyn had been planning this for weeks. She had her sights set on one of the promoters, and it was her mission to seduce him for her birthday. I, however, had no interest in these small-town folk. I was crushing on someone at my university about 30 minutes drive away. Relevant later. Being a 5'3" chubby lass, I didn't really get too much attention unless someone was feeling particularly bold or drunk. Marilyn was off draping over her promoter while I hung out in the smoking area alone, and I was targeted by a bizarre-looking gentleman. He was around 6'5", built like a brick shithouse, and had a real Cro-Magnon look about him. He was slurring his speech a little, so I thought perhaps he was drunk at first. Trying to be polite despite my discomfort with his predatory glare, I engaged in light conversation. His name was Thomas Pence, and he is a farmer from down the way there. His farmhouse is by the post office, and his land is all the fields and woodland behind the town. He's 28 years old. I tell him I'm 18. He's got a cat called Fluffins, and it's black and white. It eats mices. It leaves them on the door. The more I heard him talk, I realized he wasn't drunk, but not very well educated, not in a judgmental way, but it was clear his speech and general knowledge were lacking. I felt less threatened by this hulk of a man that was looking at me intensely, and asked him more about his cat. He was totally fixated on telling me about the cattle slaughters and how blood clots. How the cow's blood rushes out and clots into dinner plate-sized dark jelly clots. Red flag. Real bright red flag right in my face. I say I'm feeling cold and need to go back in to find my friend, as it's her birthday and I shouldn't leave her alone. As I move, he grabs me and sits me onto his lap, hard. His enormous hand is wrapped right around my upper arm and I can't really move. I look over at Marilyn with panic on my face, and she gives me double thumbs up and a big smile. She's thinking, hooray, she's pulled. I tell him I have to go to my friend and to please let me go. He looks me dead in the eyes and says, "Marilyn is happy for you." Red fucking flag. I never once said her name to him. I hadn't seen, heard of, or noticed him until he approached me outside, even though he was a giant. I tell him to let me go or I'll scream. He squeezed my chest with his free hand and forcibly kissed me before throwing me off his lap. Yuck. I try to disappear into the crowd and circle back around to get Marilyn, who wants to know who he is, whether I got his number, is he nice? So she doesn't know him either, but he knows her name. Is he watching us? Has he been following me? I say no number, no interest. I just want to go home. Marilyn wants 10 minutes to solidify her hookup with Promoter Man, so I tell her to meet me in the ladies and we'll go home from there. Figured that was a safe enough hiding space. Now Marilyn had done me wrong before with her drunken ways. I had previously been targeted by a man that called himself Rock, and he aggressively pursued me for my number. I gave him a fake one. He found out and Marilyn gave him my real one while I was getting another drink. So when she came into the bathroom, and I could see Thomas leering just outside the door, I knew what she had done. Very uncool. It was her birthday and she was so sure she'd done me a favor. I couldn't crush her lovely evening. I checked my phone and there was one message. "Maybe your blood is sweet." Kiss, 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 kiss. Maybe my blood is sweet. Maybe my blood is sweet? What the heck?
"Hey, Tom. Come out the loo."
More kisses. I decide with Marilyn that our best bet is to leave hastily and get in a taxi. Our original plan was to walk to my mum's, about a 30-minute walk away, but somehow that didn't feel safe anymore.
"Where you go, fuck nugget?"
Kiss, 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 kiss.
"You gone, what I do?"
Kiss, kiss, kiss.
"You can run, but I got you now."
I was shook. I couldn't sleep. I felt safe enough with Marilyn, the dog, and being locked in. but I just couldn't rest. I walked the dog. Marilyn went home. I scoped out the road I lived on, and the coast was clear. So I set off to go to my uni house. I make the 30-minute drive in 16 minutes, and dash into the house to tell my housemates about this nutter.
Where are you going? You live in...
Specific district of my town where my mum lives. Kiss, kiss, kiss.
Is Fug Nugget your real name?
More kisses.
You should slow down.
My female housemate decided it would be a good idea to see if he's on Facebook. We searched Thomas Pence and filtered by town. There he was, giant-headed, gormless profile picture, nothing set to private. He'd added 74 women called Fug Nug. I rang Marilyn, and she said that the only name she gave him was my first name, which is double-barreled. And he must think that's my full name. Blocked him, spoke to my tutor at uni, rang the police who say they couldn't do anything, just keep the messages. Useless. I missed a week of lectures. I stayed inside, my housemates did my shopping for me. I stayed in for all of a reading week, and decided that a fortnight would be long enough. The messages coming through were nondescript, sometimes just a series of X's, or
"You so beautiful."
And they had slowed down enough for me to not have anxiety when I heard a phone vibrate. I hadn't had a message for 2 days at this point. I put on black jogging bottoms and a black hoodie, and left in the dead of night on a Sunday to get some food from the 24-hour Tesco, thinking it would ease me back into society.
You look nice tonight.
A series of kisses.
You look like a robber.
I'm alone in a dark car park, freaking out. I call the store and ask them to send a security guard to me because I'm being followed. They sent both guards when they heard what a state I was in and took me inside and told me to turn my phone off. I stayed there for 4 hours and they monitored the CCTV for this blonde-haired giant. But nothing. We turned my phone back on, 72 missed calls, and 29 text messages. The more interesting of which were,
"I love you. Come see me."
Followed by kisses.
"Where are you hiding?
Kiss, 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 kiss.
Come out now or else. I wait for 2 weeks for you."
Kiss, kiss, kiss.
"Fuck you then. I loved you."
That was enough to go to the police with, and I made a report the following day. They couldn't find him, and he wasn't at home. He actually didn't show up at his home for another 3 days. When he did, he had a new phone and tried to say he had a twin brother, which they knew wasn't true. They called the number that was harassing me, and it rang in the drawer. He called me the moment the police left him to threaten me for breaking his heart, although their visit seemed to have dissuaded him. I moved away 1 month later, and I'm just glad he doesn't have my full name, so he can't find me. So, Thomas, let's not meet. Ever again. 2. I have been going to therapy for about a month now, and in receiving therapy I have been revisiting past experiences, and finally leaving them to rest. One of the memories is from when I was about 8. I was living in a rural area, my house facing a cemetery, with more graves than the inhabitants of the town I lived in. It was a quiet, peaceful place, a place of serene silence. About 9 or 10 blocks from the north side of the cemetery is a secluded creek, which leads to a forest area. I had 2 very close friends. Sarah was my age, Daniel 2 years older than us. Daniel had 2 cousins, one of which was old enough to drive. One slow, hot Saturday afternoon, Danny's cousin suggested we go out, get ice cream, and drive up to the lake. We all got in the pickup truck, Danny and his younger cousin riding in the bed, Sarah and I in the back seat. We passed into a small store, picking up ice cream, bottled water, and fruits. Ice creams in hand, windows rolled down, and classic rock from the radio had us hyped up for a swim. In the excitement, we made a wrong turn, and found ourselves at a lesser-used path to the creek. The older cousin didn't feel like driving more, so we decided to take our things and wade our feet into the creek. We got out, and immediately I begun to get this strange feeling. I could feel my hair stand on end. Slight discomfort washing over me. We began to walk the path, Danny chasing Sarah, under the threat of getting a bug on her. I shook the feeling off, instead enjoying the crisp air and sound of running water. After a good 7-minute walk, we reached a large rock, where we settled our things and stepped into the creek. We splashed around, collecting rocks that shone brilliantly under the water, oblivious to the world. I decided to walk up the rock because I began to crave watermelon. I sat down and it hit me. The uncomfortable wave washed over me. An intense feeling that I could only describe as vulnerable. It was as if I was completely naked, being stripped from all form of innocence and safety. I could feel eyes on my back, so I decided to turn around, fear-stricken. At first I couldn't see anything. I couldn't tell why I had felt so paranoid. After looking for a while, I saw something shiny reflect light. It was brief and small, but I thought that maybe it was a littered bottle or a piece of trash. I could hear Dan calling for me to come back down. I rushed my way down and joined the group. I told the older cousin that I spotted something weird, but that I was too scared to go check it out. He told me to ignore it. It was probably trash. But even with that, I still felt like something was wrong. We climbed back up to the rock, hydrating and eating between chats and giggles. The older cousin had his back to the creek, where he had a clear view of the same area I looked into. I had nearly forgotten all about my feeling when he stopped. His smile was gone, face pale, placing his bottle down. He immediately got up and began to shout, "Who's there?" We all turned to look and saw someone shoot out of the weeds. It looked to be a man, and he ran with something in his hand. He started saying that the man looked like he was taking pictures of us with one hand. All the blood drained from my head, the fear that I hadn't spotted the man first washing over me. How long had he been there? And had he been following us since we started walking in? We packed up and left, trying to forget the uncomfortable experience. It wasn't until 2 weeks after that, where the town was buzzing over finding a dead body in the creek. We were friendly with the caretaker of the cemetery, which was the cemetery chosen for the burial of the dead body after he was identified. He told all of us that the victim was a teenager who was killed and dumped at the creek a week ago, leaving a disfigured, half-bloated, rotting mess. The murderer was a creepy middle-aged man who lived closer to the forest area. His cabin-like house was searched, and they found toys, collected missing children's clippings from newspapers, and hundreds of pictures of families which focused on the kids and teenagers that hung out there after school. Sometimes I shudder at the thought that it was very possible that that was the same guy who was at the creek, and that it could have been us. Creepy Creek Guy, I hope to never meet you again. 3. Being a young woman who lives on her own, I've had my fair share of weird encounters, but this was probably the second creepiest ever. It was 2015, I was in my second year of university, and to give you context, I lived at home and simply drove to class since university was only 15 minutes from my house. I lived in a condo that was pretty upscale, and it was situated right at an intersection, so when you exit the parking garage, you'd have to wait at a signal. I had quite an expensive car that my parents had bought me, and it often stuck out in a crowd. My city is quite safe though, so I've never felt threatened and often drove with my window down. It was fall, so everything was quite peaceful and chill. One morning I was coming out of the parking garage and waiting at the signal to turn left, when a Jaguar drove up beside me. I didn't think anything of it, and continued listening to my music, when I see him roll down his window and gesture for me to look at him. Thinking he needed directions or wanted to get in my lane, I turned the volume down and he immediately said, "You are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." Flattered but not interested because I had a boyfriend and I know I'm not beautiful. I said thanks, awkwardly. Before university, I had been to an all-girls private school in another country, so I had really little experience with guys flirting or compliments like that from strangers. He then insisted that I give him my number and that we could go out for coffee sometime. I said no thanks, that I have a boyfriend, but thanks for the compliment. He insisted that I give him my number. People on the sidewalk were looking now, cause he was yelling quite loudly through his car to mine. Wishing the signal would open, I didn't know what to do. So as an inexperienced young woman who watched way too much TV, I decided to just give him a fake number. Bad idea. He took it on his phone, and thank God the signal opened, so I booked it out of there, and I'm guessing he turned right. When I got to university, I totally texted all my friends about it, and we laughed at how he would call the number and find out it wasn't mine. I wish that was the end, but it wasn't. A few days later it was the weekend, and 2 of my friends and I decided to go watch a movie at the theater across the street. If anyone knows the Mississauga downtown area, they know that everything is in the same area. The theater, the mall, the community center, everything. So we are sitting in the concessions area, waiting for them to open up our theater to enter. And this guy walks up to me. He's all like, "Oh hey, I tried calling you, but I think I got a number wrong because it kept going to some old lady's number." I'm just shocked at this point, but don't think much of it because we're in my neighborhood and it's totally possible to run into him. I once again iterate that I have a boyfriend and that I wasn't interested. My friends get all protective too and probably see my body language, so one of them steps up and says, "Hey buddy, she's not interested. Her boyfriend's coming any minute now, and you don't want to meet him." He mumbled something that I couldn't hear and just says that he'll see me later. At this point I'm a little creeped. For the next few days I see him every morning at the signal. Somehow he knows my timings, and gets lucky enough to get right beside me every time. I've started driving with my windows up at this point, and have my sunglasses on every day so he doesn't see my expression. He horns, he rolls his windows down. One day he got really close with the side of my car to yell something closer. I try my best to ignore him. However, I can't really do much about it because he's technically not done anything illegal. Here's another problem. I know he lives near me, but the problem is that my parking garage is shared by my building and another building, so I don't know which one he could live in. I can't report him to building security because they're pretty useless. I don't care, and it's getting on my nerves and I don't know what to do. The final straw was when I was in my university library trying to get books for an essay. I'm in the quiet zone, working near the aisle when I notice this guy looking at me from the sofa area. I'm not very good with my far sight, but just thought the person was spaced out like many others in the library. I was curious why this person wouldn't look away after a while, so I asked the guy beside me, in the individual study desk, to take a picture of me, since the starer was in the shot. I'd be able to zoom in and take a better look. The student complied and I zoom in. It's him. This guy. He's like at least 28 to 34. He looks nothing like a student. No bag or anything near him, so there's no way he's here for freaking books. Coincidences don't happen this often. At this point I'm freaked, so I go to the front desk with books, and as I check out, I tell the girl at the desk of what's happening. She graciously arranged for the senior librarian, a 6-foot-tall man, to escort me to my car. I'm paranoid the whole car ride home. How did he find me? My university is close, 15 minutes away, but not that close. It involves quite a few turns, and he really didn't look like a student. After 5 or 6 more days of this signal BS, I get tired and tell my boyfriend and parents about it. My parents freak the hell out. They live in another country as expats, so it's not like I could leave my home either. My parents and boyfriend are all in a conference call with me, though they're discussing how this guy is possibly following me. Then my boyfriend suggests that maybe it's because of my car. I've only personally seen 1 or 2 of them in my city, and my car color was rose gold, so literally anyone could spot me. It wouldn't be that hard for him to follow the only rose gold car in the city. They all come up with the idea of my boyfriend switching cars with me for the next few weeks. I was also to leave for class 2 hours before my normal schedule to throw him off, and tint my boyfriend's car so that the creep doesn't spot me in the new car. My boyfriend also gets my own car tinted. The tints for both cars are illegal by Ontario standards, But at this point, we'd rather pay fines than get followed by the creep. This plan works. I no longer see him, and I really do think he was following my car around. Maybe he'd even go to local hangout spots and check the parking lots to see if he could spot my car. Either way, for the next few weeks, it all works out and everything's fine. Then one day, while I'm heading to the gym, I get a call from my boyfriend that the creep is following him in my car. My car is tinted at this point, so the creep doesn't know it's my boyfriend in there, not me. He says that he's calling the cops and to use our Find My Friend feature to just keep an eye on where he's heading, just in case something happens. I'm legit worried at this point. After a few hours, I hear back. So after my boyfriend called the police, the dispatch said that the cops wanted him to drive to the mall parking. There's a police station at this mall, and that a cop could come out to his car in plain clothing to ward off suspicion. The creep was of course following my boyfriend in my car, and the cop affirmed this, approached the creep, and apprehended him. He threatened him with stalking, took down his info, and gave him a serious warning. My boyfriend had gotten out of the car by then, and the creep apparently stared daggers at him the whole time. The creep was never able to find me again, and my parents in the meanwhile had worked to get me moved to a new home outside of downtown, in a more affluent neighborhood, where I wouldn't stick out too much. I've also changed my license plate. Still have tint, but also changed my car color so it's more neutral. I rarely go to the downtown Mississauga area now, so, to the creep who followed me and thought I'd be impressed by his stalking skills, let's not meet. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 303. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, we have just begun on what they're promising is going to be a heat wave here in the UK. Things are definitely a little warmer, not unbearable yet, but still a little warmer to the point where I'm taking breaks in between working just so I can get blasted. I was going to say get blown by the fan, but that sounds dirty. So I can get blasts of cool air from the fan at the end of the bed there. No, that still sounds dirty. Yes. Anyway, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.